So the setting is the Animal Rights Conference. Merritt is giving a talk on, what is he talking about? What's his speech about?
Again, more irony. He's giving a speech about lowering shelter killing and promoting adoption of shelter dogs.
Okay, so does he mention pit bulls as a problem in his speech in any way?
The first about 2/3 of it doesn't come up, and then his entire ending is dedicated to pit bulls and basically how they're the primary problem in regards to shelter killing, and that's kind of how he ended it on. And then the other speakers spoke, and the talk ended, and the crowd funneled out, and that's when myself and Jeff went up to try to talk to Merritt personally, which he talked to us. So props to him for that. And, of course, my camera was recording the entire thing, and, the first thing that he said was, you're not going to reduce shelter killing of pit bulls unless you have breed-specific legislation. To that point about needing BSL, there was no attention paid by him to the perpetuation of the inflammatory and untrue stereotypes that his cherry-picked data promotes. No attention paid to the lack of housing, the renter restrictions, insurance restrictions, and that stuff that feeds that kind of stuff. No attention was paid to how the laws are an end-around to human being profiling, and no attention was paid to the shelter system structure, many of which practice off-the-books in-house BSL, which obviously feeds the shelter killing of pit bulls. So all of this was conveniently left out of his statement as to why we need BSL. So, to say Merritt is a critical thinker on that topic would be quite a leap.
And so I understand Kim Wolf was there also?
Yeah, Kim was there, and Kim asked him numerous times about the statistics and how he gathers his statistics and why they're not peer-reviewed, to which he said that they are peer-reviewed, and we know that's not true. He started talking about high-volume, low-cost spay-neuter clinics with us in a way that kind of implied how it was being done and tried in all of these states, and he actually gave Ohio and New York as examples, but then he's implying how nobody seems to take advantage of these things, and Kim kind of interjected and said that in New York City, which is where she's from, people actually line up at 5 a.m. for these types of things, and 2/3 of those people are normally turned away due to the demand not being met. And her point is that it's incredibly difficult to access these things, and these are the people with the means to access them. That's only one component of it. When you add in the people that these aren't even primarily the lower income people who may not have the information or the transportation to such an event. So there's all these aspects, and Merritt's just trying to play it off like, well, the resources are available when nobody wants them, and that's just fundamentally untrue. And the facts, fade.
I've seen the pictures of that Kim has posted with, the line, down the block at 5 o'clock in the morning. And like you said, those are people who can afford to take the bus, bring their, miss work or whatever. And Kim always talks about, and Liddy Van Cavage as well, about the underserved communities are like, there are no vets there. They're so far away that it makes it really difficult to take good care of your dog.
Oh, yeah, Kim did a really good piece on that, where she visually, shows the boroughs and where the clinics are, and how different neighborhoods don't even have clinics, and it's crazy.
What was your take on now you had this on video, I understand.
Yeah.
And so what will happen with that video? Will you post it? Will you not post it? Are there legal issues involved about posting it?
I don't think there really is. I've kind of decided that I'm probably just going to put out the entire video. There was one wrinkle with the video, because there was a lady there that was kind of, standing on the side of the conversation, and she would interject randomly, which was totally fine, but when she interjected, I would turn to her and put my camera on her, which she saw me filming, because I was filming everybody that was having the conversation. But and this conversation went on about 45 minutes. So, after this all wraps up and we all walk out, she comes at me like, were you filming me, getting real aggressive towards me. And I was like, of course I was filming you. You saw me pointing the camera at you when you were talking. I was standing a foot from you. So she went and got staff and tried to get them to take my memory card, which didn't work. And she wanted my name and my city, which I gave her. And, you know, my vibe from her was like, she's probably going to threaten to sue me, but that's not going to stop me from releasing the footage. It's like at the end of the day, it was a conversation in a public place, and if you're that scared to stand upon the information that you provided, like, that just kind of speaks for itself. It's like, why would you not want me to put a video of us conversing about issues out, like, unless you're scared of your own position? I'm not scared of what I said, and I know Jeff and Kim would back up what they said, so it's like, it just kind of discredits your point if you're then going to turn around and try to sue me to pull a video down. That's kind of ridiculous.
I've never seen Merritt in action, and I want to see his body language, the way he expresses himself, how he comes across, you know, how persuasive he is in real life, because this is a guy who apparently has enough time on his hands to be the first commenter on any news story that has to do with pit bulls.
But speaking to that issue about the time on his hands, he doesn't apparently have time to debate me, because during the actual talk that he was giving, when Kim asked, you know, why your statistics aren't in any JAVMA articles, he said, well, because the JAVMA articles and the JAVMA studies have been taken over by paid pit bull propagandists. And he said, I will debate, and I will debate them anywhere, anytime. Me personally, I'm not a paid pit bull propagandist. I'm just one guy from Pasadena. But then I offered once from the crowd and 3 times in person as I stood 1 foot from him to come up. I'll fly to Washington. I'll debate you. And he says, well, you know, I'm a busy guy. Send me a proposal. He kept hedging on whether it's possible. But, like, I'm putting myself out there to do it, and I already sent him the proposal. We'll see what happens. But, you know, it is what it is. Like, I'm trying to do my part, and I'm totally down to debate Merritt, and I'm sure Jeff and whoever else, I'm sure you would love to debate Merritt if the opportunity came up.
I would love to debate Merritt.
Came up. So, I mean, it's not like we're afraid to debate Merritt Clifton. I'm certainly not. Bring it.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to the idea that it's not controlled. I mean, when you debate somebody, you have to, you know, you can't control the information that you're giving out.
Yeah, the narrative.
You can't just say, well, it's peer-reviewed, and you say, okay, we're here at your house, or we're here, bring all your stuff with you. Where is it? You can't really, that's not a cool thing for him to have to do, because now he can't just rely on what he says. You're going to be, and you can ask your whatever question you want about whatever he's written at any time, and you know that would not be easy for him to do. I mean, you know, did he ever give any information about any of the statistics that he has about 80% of pit bulls are intact? Where would he get that from? How does he know that?
He stated that 1 out of every 107 pit bulls kills an animal every year, and I asked him how he determined that statistic, and he basically told me I should go to his website and look up the study, which was peer-reviewed. And, I mean, you know, he said he gets a lot of his statistics from classified ads, which, you know, I think he said before. A couple of the points that I want to make that he brought up before we get out of here, because I know time is short, I asked him if he believed that dogs were individuals, which is a pretty pertinent question, to which he answered that dogs have extremely strong breed-specific characteristics that have been bred into them for years. People don't, and that people are all mutts and mongrels. And another thing that he said was that, you'll very much be interested in this one. He said that he's been talking to a geneticist that believes that she's identified the gene that carries idiopathic rage, which they're now going to try to pin on pit bulls, and that it occurs in roughly 1% of the dog population, but that it occurs in over 90% of pit bulls.
I feel like his understanding of the term peer-reviewed means having your friends read what you said and agree with you. That is not what peer-reviewed means. But I'd be willing to bet $1 million times zeros.
I told him that, you know, there's not even a constant or a consistent definition of what a pit bull is, to which he asked me if I could identify Santa Claus. He said that, you know, you could identify Santa Claus in a manner that you can identify a pit bull.
Now, that's a good analogy. Well, you know, I would have said to him, well, could you pick out the swarthy baby Jesus or not?
Exactly.
But to his credit, and I always try to point out the good stuff as well. Like, he did talk to us. He was not aggressive. He kind of got annoyed a couple different times, but all in all, we had a conversation.
He believes what he believes.
Yeah, he definitely believes what he believes,
and he's not listening to any other point of view, regardless. So let's start with you, Jeff. I guess he gave his speech, and afterwards there was some conversation. What was your take on him? Is he a guy who is just blindly prejudiced against pit bulls and making data, or is he and really believes in what he's doing, or what?
Obviously he must believe it. He's been spouting that crap for years and years and years. So I imagine he's got to believe it in some way. But there's got to be another reason for him to be the way he is and the way he talks about the dogs. And he makes up some really ridiculous examples or analogies. There you go.
Yeah.
You watched the video, I assume, right, Fred?
Yes.
When he talked about Santa Claus, I was like, are you
Yeah.
serious? I mean, Santa Claus? Seriously?
What kind of example is that?
That's not an example. Exactly. That's the best you can pull. And we really did try to approach him in a professional way. We didn't go in and attack him, and we tried not to, at least. But when you say stupid things like that, it kind of makes you look like a joke.
I agree. Kim, what was your take?
Very similar to what Jeff just said. One of the things that really stuck out to me was how apparent it is that he's an armchair researcher. It's very clear to him that he's getting his information, most of his information and his views, based on what he reads and the numbers that he puts together, and he's losing sight of the big picture and what's actually going on the ground. And that was really apparent to me when he was talking about the dogs, specifically the pit bulls that are bred for purposeful reasons, intentionally bred, and he truly believes that those are the majority of dogs that are out in our communities that are being called pit bulls. And, my academic training is in anthropology and social work, and the bulk of that has to do with getting out into the field and talking to the people that you're either working with or studying. In anthropology, we call it participant observation. You go out and you spend time among the people or the community. In social work, it's direct practice in a clinical setting. And, I feel very fortunate to have had these experiences, especially over the past year, pretty much doing that, going out into these neighborhoods where we do see a lot of pit bull dogs or dogs that would be called that. And it's so blatantly obvious that these are not necessarily purebred dogs being bred with purebred dogs for a purpose or even on purpose in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go out and you get out of your computer, get out from behind your numbers and you go observe what's going on.
And also out of your prejudices against the pit bulls to begin with, because that's what's driving it.
Exactly.
He finds what he wants to find.
And, I would love for him to spend a day with me, walking around and let these horrible pit bull breeders that you're talking about and these pit bull owners, let's go talk to them, because I'm not finding them anywhere near in the degree that he claims to. And, this is not something that's unique to my experiences. This is the same thing that's being reported for other people that actually go out and work in the community or talk to, people.
Right.
So,
and you're and so, for example, you're reporting it. Ashley Much is reporting it. All the guys that work in the underserved communities trying to get veterinary care, spay, neuter, all this stuff to the people who want it, say that their people are out the door. I mean, they're blocks long. Try to get there at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I guess Merritt Clifton said, well, the people who have those dogs don't want all that.
Well, it's baloney because I can't keep up with the demand, and it's the same thing being reported across the country. But, even in terms of the dogs that are being bred, whether it's on purpose or through accidental litters, I don't mean to sound like I'm, offending the people that are having the dogs, but I think he's drastically overestimating the foresight that's going into these breedings and the level of skill that's going into these breedings, because more often than not, what's happening is someone has a cool-looking dog, and the neighbor has a cool-looking dog, and they get together, and now we got another dog. So,
right.
Sure, if that dog ends up looking like what you would call a pit bull, fine, but you can't tell me that that dog's been selectively bred for highly difficult traits to acquire, and therefore, that's the dogs that we're getting in the communities. I mean, that is happening. There are professional dog fighters that are doing that, but they are so few and far between, and those dogs are just not showing up in the pet population and really not even in our shelters except for Fight Bus, that he's basing his understanding on that type of stuff, and he's losing sight of the big picture, which is happening all around us.
And I can't agree with you more. I feel like all of the people on the pro-BSL side, they all think that the dogs that are out there in the community are 1 or 2 generations away from a purebred fighting dog who's been, and the truth is, I've never seen a purebred fighting dog. I mean, I saw Hector. He's a purebred fighting dog, but I mean, every pit bull that I've seen has been a mutt. It's been the number. If you have a fighting dog, you're not taking him out for a walk in the general place.
He's underestimating how many people are rooting for looks. Period. I mean,
and I think he's also doesn't understand the science. I don't think he has any idea about the genetic science. We have Dr. Irizarry. He was quoted in the Esquire piece. I've used him as an expert in the case in New Llano and also in Moses Lake. And, his point is that after the 3rd generation of breeding with mutts, the dog's a mutt. The dog has the dog after the 3rd generation is more like a mutt than it is like its purebred parents. And so I just feel like, I don't feel he's doing a scientific kind of analysis. I think that I guess he was bitten by a pit bull at some point, and as a result, he's like the detective who wants to find what he wants to find, and that's what he's doing.
Right. The other thing that he said to me that really made it apparent that we're not on the same page is he told me that he agrees that there are some dogs that are called pit bulls that probably aren't purebred American pit bull terriers. But he said to me, that's why I prefer groupings over breeds. And right then and there, that tells me that he's not even aware of the idea that these groupings, whether we're talking about AKC breed groupings, such as, sporting dogs versus toy dogs or whatever, or these made-up groupings that he's lumping them together as, or whether it's, bully breeds, whatever the heck that means, these groupings are artificially made. We make them up, and we make them up usually to serve a specific purpose, but they tell us nothing about genetic similarities between the dogs that are arbitrarily being included in those groupings. So if you want to talk about groupings based on appearance, fine. I personally like dogs that would fall in the grouping of, like, pug-type dogs, because that's the appearance I like. But I'm not going to draw behavioral conclusions based on those appearances or those groupings, because we're just not talking about a coherent genetic pool at that point. So if he's basing his conclusions on groupings, fine, but you need to recognize the limitations of that.
But there's a huge limitation scientifically too, because if you have groupings, you could be including a cane corso or Connie corso that looks like a pit bull, but it weighs 80 pounds, like Oogie, the guy we're going to have on next. For the first part of his life, everybody called him a pit bull. Turns out when he grew up, he was too big. But the problem is that when you do groupings, you all of a sudden put together a lot more of these dogs than you otherwise would if you had specific breed names for them. So you're like quadrupling the sample size.
Exactly.
Jeff,
we can't even agree on what the groupings are supposed to be. So I don't even know which ones are we even talking about. I mean, it changes no matter who you talk to. So
Jeff, we didn't want to interrupt you, Jeff. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, look at his quote unquote study, and he names, for the most part, breed types or breed names for all the other dogs, and then when it's pit bull, it's pit bull mix, whatever else. And I mean, to your guys' point, that's pretty much what I was just trying to say is he's obviously lumping in just tons of dogs into that. And that's another thing, too. Like, when he was talking about, I can't remember what it was he was talking about, but he went to classified ads. What was that, Kim, that he was talking about when you mentioned classified ads?
He bases the number of dogs, the pit bull population primarily on classified ads, which, you know.
Sounds very scientific to me.
He admitted to this, which is, like, ridiculous.
And my other thought about him is that Josh told us last week that he claimed that his stuff has been peer reviewed hundreds of times.
He's referring to his studies.
Hey, does that mean how many people have read it? Or does that mean? I think that's what he means.
He refers to I think it's Asian biomedicine, which is published in Thailand, which he did publish in. However, it had nothing to do with the topic that he's now discussing with us. It had to do with, I think, rabies in Southeast Asia. So that's great. I was the editor of a literary magazine in college, and I published a poem in it, but that doesn't make me an authority on genetics.
Right.
You can't pick and choose, and extremely misleading.
I guess the question is, and we get back to this with Colleen Lynn too, is, does he have any? I mean, it would seem to me, and if you're going to do this kind of work and make it scientific, you'd have to have someone who's in statistics, someone who's in, all these different areas, math, that would be able to, verify sample size, verify methodology. What's his background that gives him the ability to give these statistics when he doesn't have, as far as I know, any kind of education in that area?
Right.
I guess you're an expert if you say you are. If nobody brings it up.
Well, the thing that I find most disturbing is if his goal is genuine, which is we want to be safe, we want safe communities, then wouldn't you want to subject all your research to as much scrutiny as possible to make sure that you've got it right? I mean, to me, that's one of the main determinants of junk science versus actual valid research. People who don't have, valid research are going to be reluctant to do that. People who do are going to want every form of scrutiny and criticism they can possibly get because they are confident that they're going to get replicable results. And it's very clear that he knows he's not going to get that, and that's why he has not published on dog bites and dog bite-related fatalities in the U.S. in any sort of credible publication because he can't. It would never pass the scrutiny.
Right, and the other thing is this. We've all read many times. We're talking about real scientific people that have fudged their results for grant funding and stuff, and then you find out, that they misreported stuff, so they have a goal they want to achieve, and whenever you have research that has a goal to achieve, you have to make sure you're not letting that prejudice into the methodology.
Right. And, he was very quick to discredit the latest JASMA paper, which, it's true.
Co-occurrence?
The co-occurrence one. It is true that several of the authors are paid staff or consultants for NCRC and the ASF, but what he conveniently overlooks is that Sachs was one of the main authors on that paper. Sachs was also an author on the original paper that Merritt loves to cite.
Yeah.
So which one is it? I mean, let's talk about that, Merritt.
Well, what was his demeanor? Did he did he come across as a legitimate, well-spoken guy, or?
I was actually kind of shocked. That's one of the things I will say about him is he didn't walk away. I mean, he was, listening to what we had to say. I don't know if he was really hearing what we had to say, but he was listening to what we had to say, and
he was appearing to listen to what you had to say.
Exactly. Because he still, obviously rebutted with whatever nonsense he had. But, I mean, I got to say, he stayed with us for, what was it, about half hour probably?
Probably closer to 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, and he could have at any point just walked away because, obviously he's going to be on that side and we're going to be on this side of the fence on the issue. Yeah. We're on a complete polar opposite. So I got to hand it to him that he was at least willing to engage.
He was willing to make the appearance that he was listening.
Yeah, I will say this.
That's what I
John
think.
Did say many times that he wanted to have a more of an organized debate with him, and he said that come to Washington and hopefully Merritt actually follows through and does.
It'll never happen.
Actually,
it will never happen.
It will never happen.
He just said that to placate Josh and to make whoever was watching the video think he was ready to do it. But the truth is that every time Josh tried to get him to commit, he wouldn't.